let's get into it. I'm here with Representative Finchem. How you doing today, sir?
I'm good.
Thank you for taking this interview with the Convo Couch.
Hey, you know what? This is all about communicating the concept of free and fair elections and how we get there.
Yeah.
And you might be on the left side of the aisle.
Exactly.
I might be on the right side of the aisle. But at the end of the day, we have lost the ability, I think, to have conversations about how do we go after those things that are mutually beneficial and desirable in the pursuit of serving people.
Absolutely.
So I'm pleased to take the
Well, thank you, because it's interesting to see a lot of Trump supporters now getting in for election integrity. And for years, it was a lot of small group of progressives that were kind of out there. And then we would meet these little small other groups of conservatives, whatnot. But now it seems to have just blown up, especially what happened here in Arizona. So the first question I have for you, because I saw a lot of your hearings, I looked at all the stuff that went on. What was the smoking gun in your mind, Representative, that said, we need an audit? Was it the software? Was it the adjudication of the ballots and the whistleblower? Was it Waldron with his testimony? What was it for you?
There were a couple of things. At the very top of the list is Dr. Shiva's presentation of the mathematical. So math magicians have this tendency to think way outside of the box. And they're using the rules of math to explain things. And I thought that he appeared about 1 o'clock in the afternoon in the November 30th hearing. And what he did is he took the actual data set, the published number of votes and how they went, and compared that with thousands of iterations of a mathematical model to try and get an exact match on the slope of how people voted and who voted that way.
Yeah.
And he said the only explanation showed that 130% of Democrats had to vote.
Yeah.
Okay, that's problematic. I know enough about mathematics.
That 130% is too much?
30% means at least 30 people out of 100 voted twice.
Okay.
Or 15 people out of 100 voted 3 times.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you couple that with reports that I've received in my community down in Pima County. Hey, I hate to tell you this, but I'm a Democrat. I was like, hey, I hate to tell you this, but I don't care.
Yeah.
Well, I want to tell you that because I voted for President Trump, but I received 4 ballots in the mail, all of them addressed to me. Like, okay, that's kind of weird. Did you save the other ones? He said, and the one gentleman said, I didn't. I wish I would have. I threw them away because I figured it was just a mistake. I said, okay, that was not a mistake. Mm-hmm. That was purposeful.
Yeah.
So now, couple that Dr. Shiva's mathematical slope model with the things that people are reporting much after the fact. And I've got multiple reports. In fact, over this past weekend, I received a report from a lady in Pinell County who said both her and her daughter are registered Democrats, and they received 2 ballots each. And I said, we didn't really think anything of it, but now with everything that's going on, and she actually planted the seed in my mind of the question to ask, did that happen just with Democrats?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Did all Republicans get 1 ballot, and multiple ballots went to Democrats? So I'm in the process right now of a public records request in Pima County, and that's probably going to expand. But back to your question, Dr. Shiva's slope, that was issue number 1.
Yeah.
Issue number 2 was Phil Waldron's, I call it the migraine map.
Yeah.
Because looking at it would give you a migraine.
Yeah.
But the way it's presented, it's the only way that you can represent a network. It was the circle graph that had lines going from point A to point B, and based upon the amount of data that was being shipped, if there was a huge amount of data going out and a small amount of data coming in, it represented that in its connection on the edge of the circle. After studying it for a while, I understood what he was saying. He said the only way that can happen is if there is data that's leaving the tabulation center.
Yeah.
okay, this isn't supposed to be hooked up to the internet.
Yeah.
Then we started looking at, after the hearing, we started going through some of the bills, and we came across one where Dr. Comer with Dominion testified in front of this Arizona Senate a year or two ago and said, no, that can't happen.
Yeah.
Well, if it can't happen, then how did it happen? And by the way, would you mind explaining your tweet about I've seen to it that Donald Trump won't be reelected? Okay, that's a kind of a broad statement for the technology guy for the company that is handling the technology for counting votes. So you start adding all of those things together.
Yeah.
And on the the stack of evidence, you start with reasonable suspicion.
Yeah.
Then you go to probable cause. Okay? Or certainly a probable cause.
Yeah.
Then at some point you get to clear and convincing before beyond reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
With what we saw, and what was interesting is, as I replayed that day, I didn't ask for subpoena authority from the Speaker of the House. He was afraid I was going to use subpoenas. And I said, no, the theory of the case is this. The minute I respond to constituents, I was getting between 500 and 700 emails a day, and I know every single representative in this building and all the senators were getting the same thing. Okay, when the polity says, there's a problem here, and I expect you to do something about it.
Yeah.
Well, the Speaker of the House would not let me use the authority of the House here in the House.
Yeah.
So I reached out to some senators and some other representatives, and I said, look, I think you're with me. The people have spoken, and they want a public hearing on election integrity.
What were those emails saying? What were the people saying? Because obviously you had a little bit inside information. You had the whistleblower that came forth with the adjudication process. You had Waldron's testimony, who had the email that said in Pima County 35,000 votes were distributed to Democrats.
Yeah.
Which would explain how Arizona was a little bit different from Michigan and Pennsylvania and Georgia, where Trump had big leads and he got caught. If 35,000 were distributed out right away and they trickled out, that means that Biden would have a lead and Trump would have to try to catch them, or it would be flippy-floppy. But the people didn't know that. So what were the people concerned with that really caught your eye?
There's a great book by Malcolm Gladwell called Blink. And it speaks to the idea of how fast, I mean, you take in terabytes of information.
Yeah.
It speaks to the idea of how fast you know what you know and why you know it. Now, people knew instinctively that the polling was wrong.
Yeah.
We now know that the polling was a setup. It was a gigantic psyop, psychological operation, to set the stage for people to believe that it was a close election. Right? Yeah. You go down to Oro Valley, my community, and starting maybe the end of July, every Saturday, there was a Trump train.
Yeah.
That went down Oracle Road from Saddlebrook all the way down to, I think, Ina Road, and turned around and came back.
Yeah.
At first, it was a dozen cars. By the end of August into September, that thing was 2-3 miles long.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
In contrast, the most you ever saw was 3 or 4 old hippies on a corner waving a Biden sign.
I mean, you say there's a lack of energy and interest for Biden.
You didn't see. There's another one. You did not see Biden signs come up along Tangerine Road, which is a main road through the town that I live in.
Yeah.
You did not see Biden signs come up until 10 days before the election. None. Zero. Zip, nada.
Yeah.
So people knew instinctively something was wrong.
Did they want an audit?
They wanted an audit.
That's what. And how did you explain to them?
They wanted the opportunity to be heard and to hear what happened. Okay. I wouldn't say that they were specifically asking for an audit. They wanted to know what happened.
Okay.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Because it was starting to trickle out through media, kind of like you guys. It's not the alphabet soup controlled by the oligarchs.
Yeah.
It's media like Epoch Times, like, Bannon's War Room, like Just the News, John Solomon's thing. And I don't think that the mainstream media has an appreciation for just how much they've lost.
Yeah.
Nobody trusts them anymore.
No.
Even the people who are using them to advance their narrative don't trust them.
Yeah.
They have become captured by, whether it's Chinese Communist Party, it could be Zuckerberg, it could be... Money speaks in those circles.
Yeah.
And money corrupts. And
Okay.
I think that's what has happened in the media. So people had an inherent distrust of the media already. They saw, and you got a lot of smart people in the state. You got a lot of engineers. They're watching what was going on in Pennsylvania, and they saw the denominator flip. Meaning they saw what was supposed to be a set universe of ballots suddenly had an increase in ballots added to it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you saw the classic line,
Yeah.
oh, well, Joe Biden just jumped ahead by 160,000
Votes, yeah.
It's like, whoa, time out. In that moment, the people in Arizona said, okay, something doesn't fit.
Okay.
All right? And, I was the one who, I guess, said, look, this isn't their election. This is the people's election.
Yeah.
This is an election owned by the House of Representatives. It's not an election owned by the McCains. It's not. This is the people's election. And by God, the people have a right to scrutinize their election.
Absolutely.
So that's what bore out, okay, let's have a hearing. And as soon as I started talking about that, some of the folks from the Giuliani team reached out to me and said, hey, we understand that you're the chairman of federal relations in the House. This is the last legislature. We'd like to have the opportunity to present our case.
Yeah.
Would you be open to that? And I'm like, funny you should call. Maybe you're listening to my phone. I don't know. Because my constituents want to have that.
Yeah.
So here's what I would propose. We would have a hearing that is an objective platform. And by that, I mean members of the panel can only ask clarifying questions about terms. And, when you say, when you use a particular term, what do you mean by it? Can help me? Okay. What's the difference, for example, between electronic adjudication, and physical adjudication? Explain to me what that is.
Yeah.
Okay. All other questions, hands off.
Yeah.
We want to hear the evidence as it would be portrayed in a courtroom.
Yeah. Okay.
Interestingly enough, the moment, and this was the theory of my case, the moment we announce a public hearing, people will come out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
In a desire to tell their story.
Absolutely.
They're willing to sign affidavits. They're willing to swear to it under oath, which, by the way, a sworn affidavit is evidence.
Yeah, it is.
Even people in this building don't understand that is evidence.
How many affidavits did you get about when this happened and the news came out?
We got about 20 right off the bat.
Okay. What were those affidavits saying? Were they more like about, hey, they didn't let me scrutinize and look at signatures, or they shut me out of the room?
It was that's a great question. Yeah. It was a wide variety of things. Everything from Sharpie Gate.
Yeah, Sharpie Gate.
All the way to, I didn't have the opportunity as an observer to truly observe. I was told I had to stay 6 feet away. I had to do this. It's like, okay, how is that different from the past? Oh, in the past, I was able to stand over somebody's shoulder.
Yeah.
So it kind of feeds into the narrative that this whole COVID-19 thing actually is an engineered crisis.
Yeah.
To alter an election. And, okay, there's conspiracy theories all abound.
Have you heard about the Great Reset?
Heard about the Great Reset.
There's a lot of conspiracies.
But when it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's got feathers, you might want to think, is this a duck? At least ask the question.
Yeah.
And that's what our purpose was in the hearing. People wanted to have questions asked. They wanted to examine things that they weren't seeing on the mainstream media. In fact, the mainstream media didn't have any interest at all in this hearing.
Yeah.
Until...
Not even Fox?
Well,
so called Arizona for the Democrats first?
Yeah. Well, as it played out, it was very interesting. We had 160 seats available in an 800-seat ballroom because of the whole COVID thing. Okay? Yeah. It's like, all right, we'll give... Because private citizens were paying for this hearing.
Yeah.
That's important to know because the House of Representatives did not pay for it. I carried the cost on my business credit card. My business had been destroyed by the hardcore left, but I still had a line of credit. And it's like, okay, the cost ballooned into a much larger number than we had anticipated, and people stepped up. They said, look, we want to know.
Yeah.
We want to know. You can't hide this from us. So we had, out of 160 seats, obviously 10 seats were already taken with representative senators.
Yeah.
We had 10 seats that were allocated for Mr. Giuliani and witnesses that were coming in and coming out. We couldn't exceed that number. So we had left like 120 seats, and we gave 10 to the media.
Yeah.
Okay. Apparently, they didn't really care until they found out, oh, this is really going to be a story.
Oh, yeah.
Now, interestingly enough, folks like OAN and some of the
right side, I believe, got in the room.
The right side, there was another one that was kind of a left-leaning outfit, and I don't remember who it was because I wasn't managing that.
Yeah.
But we had 10 slots for media.
Yeah.
And they filled up that
Just
fast.
yeah.
Okay.
We were trying to get in the room. I was calling you. It's like, we want to come in for this hearing.
Yeah.
But it seemed like it was just everybody was so interested about this hearing. As soon as it was announced, they were like, let's get here.
But not the mainstream media.
Yeah.
They wanted to treat it like it. In fact, even our governor said, it's just a meeting.
Yeah.
Really? You're going to be that dismissive to the people?
Oh, yeah.
Seriously? So that kind of created its own mystery in and of itself, that there were a lot of people that didn't want this hearing to happen.
Yeah.
Particularly the very powerful political types.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, I got elected by the people to serve the people, and this is their interest. It's in their interest. Whether you like the outcome of it or not doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The fact that we had a public hearing on election integrity, asking questions, I think was the greatest service that we could do to people, do for people. And ultimately, the Foxes of the world... Freudian slip there.
Are you quoting Malcolm X there, sir? You know you're a Cameron.
Well,
don't let the fox into the hen house.
That's right. So the Foxes of the world finally, I think, realized that, hey, we need to get in there. Yeah. And the 10 slots had already been filled up. And OAN quite graciously said, hey, we're happy to provide a feed.
Yeah.
And, we'll what is it, post-production or whatever they do, where they add the chyron and all that stuff later. But they were willing to provide a feed.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the news media ever took them up on that.
No.
But the word got out. And it's I use this metaphor a lot, that the ocean is truth.
Yeah.
And lies are a vessel floating on truth. The moment you have a crack in that vessel, the truth is going to seep in.
It is, yeah.
And over time, that lie is going to sink to the bottom of truth.
Absolutely.
And I think what happened, in retrospect, media, like yourself, the folks at NTD, Epoch Times was all over this like a pup on a bone. They got the word out, and it spread organically. Now, of course, the media's, it's conspiracy theory. Okay. Just stop a second. That line is about as old as some of the suits that I'm wearing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's no longer.
Do you know when it was invented?
I have no idea.
It was invented when people would question the Kennedy murder. The CIA created the term conspiracy theory to shut everybody up.
Yeah.
Just like they're trying to shut you guys up
for
this audit right now.
Right.
What was the biggest pushback from your colleagues? Not so much pushback. What was their excuse from Democrats in the House and in the Senate to justify not having an audit and sticking with the results? What were they saying to all of the craziness that was going on?
They started off with just ignoring it. Wouldn't speak to it.
Yeah.
And then you could tell when the media machine kicked in, when they got messaging. Oh, it's just a big lie.
Yeah.
Apparently, they didn't do a lot of study in history. That's a term that was used by the Nazi Party prolifically.
Yeah.
So, let's see. National Socialist Democrat Party. If you're going to promote something as a big lie, you better be able to back it up. And what they didn't do, I think the fatal error that they made is they didn't have anything to back it up. They didn't have an alternative theory of the case. Because when you start to see, for example, Antrim County, I know Pat Quebec very well, have met Matt DePerno, have talked about what they found in the machines up there. Okay, you lied to people, Dominion. You told them it didn't have a network interface card. Okay, telling half the truth is as good as a lie. It didn't
have an air gap, they say.
It didn't have a NIC card. It had a chipset that emulated, from what I understand, emulated a NIC card. And I don't know if it uses Bluetooth or how, but when you've got any system in the building that can act as a router, like, for example, a Bluetooth-operated thermostat, it's open. There is no air gap.
I know. That's
and
what they
not
say.
having a wire in the back of the machine, that's not an air gap. Okay? So people, you've got way too many smart people that aren't going to take the false narrative. And I think that's where, and the Democrats who are invested in this, who want a certain outcome to be guaranteed, they're in full freak out mode right now. Because you've also got, I think it's as high as 30% of Democrats nationwide, it's not just in Arizona, have serious questions about free and fair elections. John Brakey, for example. John is, in my view, an American hero. Doesn't get a whole lot of credit, but he's an American hero. Because he is a courageous man who for years has challenged the establishment machine for things that they do which have the potential to alter elections. And they know it. That's the thing that's most disturbing. So when you see Democrats and Republicans united to ask questions, by the way, I want to be really clear. On this audit that is going on with the Senate right now, when they get done, they're going to have an audit work product. They're going to have a report. I'm going to accept that report. And if it says that Donald Trump lost, and here's the evidence, okay. If it says that Mark Kelly won, here's the evidence. Great. That is the one thing that we can do to see to it that the American people, particularly Arizonans, can have confidence that their election was fraud-free. And I'm not talking about, you're always going to have those individual acts of fraud. I'm talking about systemic fraud.
If you're talking about election fraud, not voter fraud. Election fraud.
Exactly. The systematic portion of it. Okay? You're always going to have those individual hits where somebody that has a broken moral compass is going to vote twice. You're always going to have that.
That's not going to turn an election.
That's noise. That's not signal. Signal is, do we have a system in place that allocates votes from one person to another? An algorithm. Okay? Do we have a system where you brought up the 35,000 votes that I was told about from the fictitious Brian Watson, whoever you are. If they know in advance and they brag about how they're going to do it, okay, that's a systemic problem. And I'm thankful to, what is it, Molly Ball out of Newsweek magazine or Time magazine, whatever the magazine.
Oh, you're talking about Molly Ball's the cabal. Oh, we broke that down.
Here's how we did it, and we're bragging about it.
Anywhere else that would be considered treason, but for some reason it justifies how they saved the election. We broke that down. That was such a joke.
And I think what they were trying to do with that is get ahead of what they knew was going to be a losing narrative.
Oh, yeah. You're absolutely right.
That is beyond disgusting. And I do believe that there will be an accounting for that. And the American people, the people who participated in that right now, they ought to be buying plane tickets to Cuba.
Well, I don't know if they're safe in Cuba, but let's stick on this topic right now. I'm going to ask for this section, the actual audit itself. My last question I'm going to ask first, because you touched on something, because you said you're going to take the results as they come. This is the evidence. This is the results. So, for the record, Because, I was looking at the Telegram audit chat right now and stuff, and we still have a lot of people who think this audit is about Donald Trump coming back.
No.
What is this audit about then?
This audit is about, it's on several different levels. The highest order is what I would characterize as freedom of navigation. Okay. On the open seas, you have freedom of navigation. The American people have a sovereign right to exercise dominion and authority over their election system.
Yeah.
What ensures that is the ability to scrutinize it.
Yes.
We can never let that go.
Okay.
Because as Stalin said, I don't really care who votes.
Yeah.
I just want to be the one to count the votes.
It's the power doesn't lie with those who cast the vote. The power lies with those who count the vote.
That's right.
All right.
So at that level, if we do nothing else, the fact that we have exercised our sovereign authority as a polity to examine the vote, to compare the paper ballots with electronic tabulation. And the reason that a recount sample is not sufficient, it's because you've got to know the actual universe of people that voted and who filled in what bubble for what person.
Yeah.
And you've got to be able to compare that with the electronic version of that.
Okay.
Now, there's a great movie called Kill Chain. I hope people will watch it.
Too much of the Russia stuff.
It's got a bunch of Russian stuff, but the fact that they were able to manipulate the numbers on the machines, that 2.5 minute segment out of there was the big takeaway.
Yeah.
If you identify, and that ties back into what Phil Waldron was talking about, fractional voting.
It's a feature.
And it's like, well, wait a minute. How can you have a 0.98 vote?
Yeah.
All right, you go all the way back to the 1960s, Earl Warren Court, where they established the doctrine of one man, one vote.
Yeah.
One person, one vote. I don't want to
one person
disparage women in any way.
We gotcha. Yeah.
No, it's one mankind. One person, one vote.
Yeah.
To do anything else, in my view, is nothing more than reassertion of Dred Scott. You're not 3/5 of a person.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
You have a sovereign right to vote. You have a sovereign right to scrutinize the vote.
Yeah.
Now, and frankly, I've talked with the president, talked with him about 3 weeks ago, and I said, Mr. President, just understand, as much as I support you, I want to be clear. This audit is about determining yes or no, proving or disproving that there was fraud in the election, period. And I'm pretty confident that if the audit comes up as Joe Biden won by X number of votes, you'll accept that. Mm-hmm. He said, absolutely, I will.
Yeah. Well, let's stick.
So it's not about Donald Trump. It's about having a fraud-free election, but the actual legitimate tabulation of votes.
Yeah.
That's what matters.
Yeah.
And if we prove in the audit that the machine did not accurately represent the paper, the machine's got to go.
Yeah, these are conversations I want to have. I want to stick right here with the proprietary software, because that's a term that I hear a lot of new people, they don't use enough. They're concentrated on Dominion, they're concentrated on ES&S or Smartmatic or the HART program. They all have this feature, and it's kind of crazy because, I don't need that. It's kind of crazy because breaking had to go on Steve Bannon. And Steve even asked him, he said, well, was MSNBC or CNN providing him an avenue? And he kind of chuckled because no. And it reminds me of Bev Harris when she had to do the same thing years ago talking about fraction magnitude. She had to go on Alex Jones. We've studied the whole situation when it comes to proprietary software, and a lot of us feel it's one of the biggest problems. How are you guys going to obtain the proprietary software in this audit? I've been questioning this the whole time because Dominion owns the proprietary software, and we have never gotten a chance to look at any of this software.
Right.
How are you guys going to obtain and look at the software if they own it, even though you guys have been granted a full forensic audit?
I'm not a part of the audit work plan.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to do that.
Yeah.
but I will, my position on the authority to do that, there's a reason that the electronic tabulation manufacturers had to file with the Secretary of State's office their software and hold it in escrow. Why is that? That is so if there is an allegation of fraud, that we've got a baseline that we can go back to and say, this is the software that you said you were going to use in your equipment.
Yeah.
If it's been altered, that's a violation of federal law.
Yeah.
The only way that we can determine whether it's been altered is to open it up and take a look at it.
Gotcha.
So I don't really care about your claim of proprietary software. You're doing business with the sovereign state of Arizona.
Yeah.
I don't care about your proprietary software. The fact that you placed it in escrow for a purpose, and that purpose is for it to be examined in the event that there's a claim of fraud.
Yeah.
Game, set, match. You want to go to court? Fine. Let's go to court.
Yeah. I think it's going to come to that. I mean,
I'm pretty sure that if it does, they will lose.
Yeah. So aren't you afraid that they can change that software by the time you get in court to grab that stuff? Or?
Well, if they change the software that's on the machines, and it isn't an exact match for what was in escrow, they have committed a federal crime.
Federal crime. Okay.
So and going back to your, what do we hope to see? What do we hope to find? What's the purpose of the audit? There's 4 eventualities. 1, everything was free and clear.
Gotcha.
Okay. 2, there was incompetence involved.
Yeah.
3, there was criminality involved.
Yeah.
4, there was a combination of criminality and competence involved.
Yeah.
So going on that premise, you're trying to disprove the latter 3. We want to disprove that there was any kind of fraud. We want to, because fraud is a motive specific, intentional crime.
Exactly. Yeah.
Incompetence, while it may be misfeasance and malfeasance, it's not a crime.
Yeah.
Because there's no intent.
Gotcha.
When it comes to the combination of the 2, if it's not there, it's not there.
Yeah.
It's just not there. And that leads you to the eventuality that the election was not tampered with.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll see. I don't want to predispose my thought to we're going to find this smoking gun. I have no idea what the work plan is.
Weren't you part of picking the team, though, or no?
No.
So you had no say in who the Cyber Ninjas or
none whatsoever.
Javon, none.
This whole thing is a Senate show. The House is not involved in this, other than we're kind of sitting on the bleachers, and there is information that comes out of the Senate periodically, but we try not to talk about that as much as possible.
Yeah.
The specifics of it. First of all, we don't want to see the people who are doing the work harassed.
Gotcha.
That's the MO of the radicalized militant left.
Yeah.
Doxing people, showing their face on TV. If you see this person, harass them in the store, make their life bloody freaking miserable. That's not how a civil society can exist. And if we begin to accept that kind of behavior, our republic's already gone.
Yeah. Okay. What other areas in this audit are you looking into other than the software that you are just hoping? Obviously, you're not involved. It's the Senate. But what area do you think there's a good chance of them finding something? Is it the adjudication with Sharpie Gate? I mean, are we like, we heard about all these ballots that are out there. Are we looking for these black Sharpie ballots that are filled out?
I don't think Sharpie Gate ends up being a thing. I'm going to be very surprised if it ends up being a thing. Now, the question about artifact and whether it's, I don't know, I've seen a report that Pulitzer software is going to be used. I didn't even know he had software. He has said that you have to essentially write the software to match the ballots and all that. So conceptually, if you're able to spot things on ballots, so for example, a mail-in ballot that's never been folded, that needs to go in the suspicious pile.
Yeah.
And many of the things that are coming out of this are going to be public policy decisions where we make determinations on, okay, what do we need to do in order to craft legislation where this thing can't happen again in the future.
Is that what AB 2827 is about? Is that your bill? 2827, I believe.
2827.
Your election integrity bill? What's the...
It's not my bill. I'm not sure what that's about. There are a number of election integrity bills that are going...
Do you have one sponsored, or...?
No.
Okay. It has it on your website, I think, so.
Well, we've got so many bills that are tied up right now in the appropriations system. Yeah. We don't really know what's going to come out. It's called the money box. We can either afford it, we can't afford it. Whatever it is. I don't remember the number and title of that, but there are a couple of bills that are, I think, important. One of those establishes a fund to use fraud countermeasures, and unfortunately I don't have a black light, but this is a concept piece that has an ultraviolet algorithm. An ultraviolet hologram. And that hologram has to be printed on the paper before the ballot's printed. Okay. Well, interestingly enough, the paper can be supplied to the printing outfit to print the ballots with a hologram already on it. What that will do is establish, and this is John Breaky's big thing, it will establish an audit trail from the beginning of the process to the end of the process. You will know with certainty how many sheets of paper were used in the election. And if you have a number that exceeds that number, you immediately have a cause for a full investigation to find out whether or not every ballot had the hologram on it. Okay. Now, the reason that's important is there are reports of ballots that were injected into the system, not just here in Arizona, but in Pennsylvania, the big truckload of ballots. Okay, so if you can define what that universe is, and you begin to say, okay, we have 100,000 ballots went unused. We can go ahead and destroy those, but we're not going to destroy them because that is a part of the universe. Now you can do, for example, you have 100,000 ballots that were mail-in ballots. Okay, you take those off the list. You have on-site voting. You take that off the list. And you begin to narrow down wherever, if there is fraud in the ballot piece of that, where that might be. Okay. That's one of the things, and it's an appropriation. We plan to reimburse if we can get it passed. We plan to reimburse the counties for using the paper. Have you guys thought about adding tracking to your mail-in ballots too, as well? Well, there is tracking on this. That's a bit of a dicey question because we have an anonymous election. Okay. Now the QR code, which is in the upper corner here, is unique to this sheet of paper. Okay. And what we're trying to do is figure out if I were to scan that, and the maker of this has already set this up for us, so to test, it will, if you scan it with your phone, it'll give you a unique ballot number from a disinterested third party. Your ballot, this is your number. What could happen is you do a scan of all the ballots, it reads the QR code, and reports to the Secretary of State, this number has been counted. And then if you have a bridge software, the voter could see, yes, my ballot is confirmed as being counted. It's not a far step then for the voter to see, this is my ballot. And they'll be able to self-check whether or not that's who they voted for. But you said bridge software. In a lot of the situations, Dominion, ES&S, HARP, Smartmatic, they say you can only use the paper companies that are compatible with our machines. It's tough. You're fine. Exactly. That's what you're going to do. All right, I got you. So you're running for Secretary of State. I am. Correct. Obviously, you're an election integrity person now, especially what happened here. Everybody seems to be an election integrity person. What would Secretary of State Finchem's top 3 responsibilities be as far as elections are concerned? In what areas? What 3 changes will you push for
more than anything.
A lot of that's going to come out of the audit.
Yeah.
I think that, one of the big things is we've got to establish an audit trail.
Yeah.
We have a very messy election system right now. And that goes back many years. It's not just the current Secretary of State's fault.
Yeah.
That goes back probably even before Ken Bennett. The introduction of mechanization into the system, whenever you introduce something, I'm a Six Sigma guy, whenever you introduce something into a system that is a technological advancement, you've got to understand what are the potential items that can complicate that system.
Yeah.
Software is one of them.
Yeah.
Internet access is one of them.
Yeah.
So I think that one of the top priorities will be to work with the county recorders and with the county elections officials to help get a means by which, if they want to move away from mechanized tabulation and go back to hand counting.
Is that where you stand?
I would prefer, quite frankly, you do a cost-benefit analysis. Look at the horrendous lost economic opportunity cost that we have had with this. I mean, you got 70 lawyers come in from Perkins Coie at $265 an hour.
Yeah.
Endless hours. You got the county and all their time that's been spent. You've got this horrendous cost on defending an election to essentially hide the results, hide everything from the public scrutiny. Wouldn't it be more cost effective to hire 2,000 people to count ballots for 24 hours? I mean, that's a defined cost. You know what the run rate is, so you know how many people you need to hire. And you have, at the end of the day, you've got the involvement of the people in managing the election.
Yeah.
As opposed to the involvement of a machine that can be manipulated by one person. Let's get back to scrutiny. Let's get back to the ability for us to look at the election and how it was tabulated.
Yeah.
It also prevents fractional voting.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that one of the big things that we need to do is have more involvement with the public. That's number 2. So supporting the county elections officials, more involvement with the public. And I think right now, the American people have never been more awake than they are today about elections.
Yeah.
And then number 3, again, I got to go back to what are the audit results going to be? What is that going to tell us?
You're looking for information first.
I'm looking for information before I decide on what I would want to do.
Yeah.
But one of the things that has really disturbed me about the current Secretary of State is once you're elected into that position, the expectation is that you are going to be akin to a disinterested third party. You're going to see to it that the election is free and fair. That if there is any opportunity for systemic fraud, if there is any opportunity for a breakdown in that election, that you address that and you address it quickly. Yeah. Our current Secretary of State is out in the world calling people Nazis.
Playing team sports.
She's playing team sports.
Playing team sports.
Yeah. and that's not what the Secretary of State should be doing.
Yeah.
Okay? You shouldn't come out and say, my job as Secretary of State is to see to it as many Democrats as possible. Time out. That's not your job. Your job is to be a curator. You're the state historian. You're the curator of records. You are the person who registers lobbyists so that people know who is advocating for what. And you are the chief elections officer for the state of Arizona.
Yeah.
That means that you don't arbitrarily sign off on a document, the canvas, to send to the Vice President of the United States when there's a hearing going on. There was nothing magical about 10:30 in the morning on November 30th. Both her and the governor could have waited until 10 o'clock at night when the hearing was over.
Yeah.
But instead they didn't care. They sent a signal to the people of Arizona they did not care.
Yeah.
That is in direct conflict with the emails that we're receiving to this day, but we're receiving at the time demanding a public hearing.
Yeah.
And to be dismissive about that and say, it's a meeting of a couple of legislators.
I know.
okay, all you did was poke the bear, and the bear is pretty upset right now.
I'm going to talk about my last subject real quick because we've talked about, obviously, we talked about the mail-in ballots. We've talked about the software in the back of the house. Democrats, and we've experienced this 2016, 2020. When you hear a lot of mainstream media, Democrats talk, or whoever you want to call them or classify them, they talk about suppression of vote. Now, there's a theory out there that a lot of people think that the man behind the curtain, whoever's running this planet here, broke the system of voting when it comes to our elections. Here in 2016, it was a Democratic primary. They closed 70% of the polling places.
Right.
The lines were like crazy, whatnot. And we got to a system where people were waiting. Now, we've experienced in 2020, when it came to the Democratic primary too as well, pushing a lot of Latinos into what do they call it? Provisional ballots, excuse me. What are you going to do to help the other side of the coin? All right, you're a Republican, right? But what are you going to do as Secretary of State to help the people who classically or historically have been shut out for voting, that are still crying and saying, hey, man, we're being suppressed, our vote is being suppressed. How are we going to make sure that their votes are really counted and their concerns are addressed?
So I think that, again, drawing on my Six Sigma history, quite often you have to take a step back in order to move forward. And I know it sounds like a corporatism, but it really is true. We used to vote by precinct.
Yeah.
So, and this goes back to Adrian Fontes. Helen Purcell, the recorder before him, was given a defined budget by Maricopa County.
Yeah.
You've got, because we have so many people who are voting by mail now, we're not going to authorize expenditure for the voting locations that we used to have. You're going to have to consolidate those. Okay, and then that was advanced even further by Fontes to create these mega voting centers.
I hate them.
I think.
Sorry.
Well,
I like the precinct because it's more trackable that way to go back there.
It's part of the audit trail. That's exactly
part of the audit trail.
Exactly
yeah,
right. So, and I hear a lot from people saying, well, we've got to get rid of mail-in ballots because it's the bane of our existence. Hey, there's an easy solution to that. Get off the list. Go to the polls. Because the more people who get off the list and go to the polls, that universe of ballots begins to shrink. And with a smaller universe, the potential for fraud is going to pop right out. Now, to your question about communities that are making the claim that they have been negatively impacted by policies. Okay. So,
Georgia's a great example. And my partner wrote an amazing piece. I sent it to you about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I can't speak to Georgia, but what we can speak to is the state of Arizona. I want to see us return to a place, if you choose to vote by mail, great. How do we secure your ballot? Because there's two kinds of voter suppression. One is the blocking of people, forcing them to stand in line so that they have to be there for 4 hours while they had to be at work 2 hours ago. I mean, there's talk right now, which I think is an interesting idea, of making voting day a state holiday.
That'd be great.
Well, I remember the day where an employer had an obligation to allow you to leave to go vote.
Yeah.
But if you have to stand in line for 4 hours,
exactly,
that's onerous on the employer.
Yeah.
Okay, so perhaps that's a solution. I don't know. We don't know what the cost would be involved. That's a possibility. But that's voter suppression, blocking people's access to the polls. The one that I think is even more pervasive is voter nullification. That too is voter suppression, kind of the ugly twin sister.
Yeah.
Or twin son, whichever.
Whatever.
For every vote that is cast that is not a legal voter, that presumably dilutes the legal voter pool. Now, you can't say one for, there's two possibilities. One, it either exacerbates it and increases the number, or it truly nullifies. This is a vote for Biden, illegal. This is a vote for Trump, legal.
Yeah.
It cancels out that vote.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is one of the things that I think is going to come out of the audit is what are strategies that we can employ to reduce the amount of voter nullification. Now, when it comes to people complaining about not having access, the number of people who complained about that this year in this election was pretty small.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's voting centers that are the issue. Now, I can see an architecture, I can imagine an architecture where you have a voting center, but you're still voting by precinct. You go, maybe you have a place like the Coliseum, for example, a voting center, and it hosts a dozen different precincts. You walk in the door, here's my voter registration card. Great, you're precinct 217 over there in the corner.
Yeah.
Have a nice day.
Yeah.
That way you're able to protect the systemic audit trail. Okay?
Yeah.
But these are concepts right now.
Yeah.
Until we know what comes out of the audit.
Yeah.
The systemic stuff is going to take us a while. That's going to have to be careful public policy decisions. And of course, that means hearings, that means focus groups, that means stakeholder groups. What can we do? What can we afford to do?
Yeah.
This piece here, 20 cents a ballot.
Mm-hmm.
20 cents a ballot for us to build an audit trail. That is amazingly cheap.
Yeah, it is.
And when I talk to voters about this concept, wildly popular.
What about in the Georgia bill, there was something where there was an avenue to go through the Secretary of State's website to register. In other words, they were saying, well, I think with Governor Kemp's numbers, he said 96% of the people are already eligible to vote. Stacey Abrams said somewhere like only 89%, 88%. So it's a little bit over 90%. Is there any way Secretary Finchem can find another way to make it more accessible to get people registered to vote to help out? Have you thought about anything like that to maybe curtail the pushback about a lack of accessibility?
I haven't really given that much thought.
Okay.
I mean, it is so easy to register to vote in the state of Arizona.
It is? Okay.
I mean, it's very easy. There's this urban legend that there are people that are interfering with voter registration. That's just not true.
Mm-hmm.
I think the people that are interfering with voter registration, to go back on what I just said, is the people that choose not to register.
Yeah.
And there are people who choose for very good reasons not to register to vote.
Yeah.
They don't want to be found out. They want to live their life without being called for jury duty and without being harassed by the government. And I don't want to say they're libertarians, but I think it's a very libertarian mindset.
Yeah.
Leave me alone.
Yeah. Well, I think people don't believe in the system. And if you don't believe in the system, you're not going to participate in the system that is...
That's a very good point.
Fugazi, excuse me, if you haven't heard that word before. You're friends with Borelli, Senator Borelli, so I know he knows that word. And if system is Fugazi...
He's used it from time to time,
Of course, yes. And it's Fugazi, not Fugazi out there for you and stuff. Did you have another question or no? Did you have a question or...
The funding.
Oh, yes. Let's talk about two things we have to talk about. Number one, so there are some people with this audit, just wrapping this up, there are some people with this audit who say that it's costing taxpayer dollars.
Mm-hmm.
How much taxpayer dollars is it costing? And isn't it also privately funded?
I've heard rumors that it's privately funded. And some of them, I suppose, can be substantiated. Because it's not a House show, This is purely Senate.
Yeah.
I have no idea who's paying for what.
Okay.
I really don't.
So
I know that there...
Can you find out?
I do know that there has been money contributed to pay for security detail.
Yeah.
Okay? So you got to be careful when you say, well, there's money being shelled out in the private sector for the audit. Okay, that's a very broad description. I would not count... And of course, you're going to include the security detail. You're going to include... the rent for the building, all of those things, that's all audit cost.
Yeah.
I don't know who's paying for what.
Yeah.
And it's as a matter of public record, I mean, I guess it's available.
Yeah.
But I find it very interesting that
You have no problem with the state paying for it or the
No,
county.
I think it's a responsibility of the state to pay for it.
Okay.
That should be. In fact, if I subscribe to the theory that Zuckerbucks was patently illegal. That's putting the thumb on the scale of the election.
Absolutely.
Okay. The other thing that I find very interesting is that the alphabet soup of mainstream media, where were they at when Zuckerberg gave $3 million to Maricopa County and to influence the election?
Was that drop boxes?
Everything from drop boxes to operations to, well, you counties need to have some money.
Yeah.
Okay. Where was the media on that?
Yeah.
They're losing their minds over the fact that somebody might pay out of pocket to see to it that the audit is done properly.
Yeah.
But they had nothing to say at the front end of the system.
Yeah.
Hypocritical beyond belief.
Yeah.
Certainly not Hippocratic.
It was in the Time Life magazine, by the way.
Do no harm?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, you did some harm.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's very important that, once again, this is an election of the people. The people own this election. And if you have people who want to step forward and say, look, I believe that the audit is necessary. Whatever the result may be, I'm willing to help pay for this or this or this. And I don't know what the motive is for people, but I've learned here while I've been in office 7 years. I'm going into my last year next year as a legislator. You get into some pretty dangerous ground when you start to question people's motives.
Yeah.
Unless they state specifically what their motive is.
Yeah.
Now, in the case of Mark Zuckerberg, he stated specifically what his motive was.
Yeah.
Okay. The people who may be paying for security, I think it's evident if they're writing a check for security, they're of the mindset that they want to see to it that the audit itself is protected.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty altruistic when you stop and think about it.
Yeah. I have one last question. Let me get
yes, sir.
One question. And the last one is, I have his name right here for you because we have one situation that I want to make sure. Okay. In closing, we heard about this whole situation. I have to ask you about Anthony Kern. Mm-hmm. Have you heard about this?
I've heard
your local champion news reporters out there, I don't want to make too much fun of them, they've kind of spotted him, and there's a picture of him floating around. And not only, I think, you saw Fontes on TV with this, I think his name is Bram Resnick or whatever it is,
yeah.
The guy's trying to compare the people of the audit who are doing the audit to the people of January 6th. And they are also pointing out that Mr. Kern was there as well,
mm-hmm.
and also pointing out the fact that his name, some of them said his names are on the ballot. I don't know if that's true or not. Do you see any conflict of interest with him participating in the audit?
I don't think he should be in the audit world. If he wants to, but again, we go back to the idea that this is the people's election to provide oversight. I think that there are a number of roles that individuals could play. So, mm-hmm. for example, myself, as a 21-year veteran of law enforcement, my role probably would rightly be external security. It's where my skill set's at.
Gotcha.
I know that they were looking for individuals who could pass a background check.
Yeah.
They went through a lot of people and disqualified a lot of people from being the audit tabulators. Now, there's an argument to say, well, that's a conflict of interest. At the same time, every single action that a ballot inspector goes through is recorded.
Mm-hmm.
So, Bram Resnick,
yeah,
Adrian Fontes,
yeah.
Did you stop to think about the idea that there's a video record of everything that man's doing?
Yeah.
No, you didn't stop to think about that because all you're trying to do is advance a narrative that impugns somebody.
Yeah.
Now, optically, probably doesn't look so good.
Yeah.
But we go back to the original thought. If it's recorded, nobody's going to get away with anything.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So how about we stop with the political rhetoric? All right. I think Bram Resnick's mission at this point is to try and make the audit into a circus.
Yeah. Well, he's not the only one.
Well, he's not the only one, but he's the one that's always running his gums out on the internet and public the platforms for Twitter and I mean, if that's where you're getting your news from,
yeah,
really, that is at best a dubious channel. Okay, but I've learned don't question people's motives unless they say exactly what their motive is, because there's way too much opportunity to characterize people as nefarious actors when all they're really trying to do is make a contribution.
Representative Finchem, I appreciate you taking the time out for the Convo Couch, sitting with us leftists, because we do care about election integrity, and I think that's where we have space that we get to share.
Yeah, how we serve the people.
Yeah,
elected office, communications, having that bridge and a focus on public service. I think we all get to kind of set our political hat off to the side and say, okay, how do we solve a problem if the problem exists?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're focused on solving a problem, you're focused on a mission. And if we all agree, okay, everybody's idea matters. And as you go through that process, there are ideas that are going to fall by the wayside like chaff off a grain.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you get to the kernel of what really matters. And I think in this particular case, you are pursuing election integrity. I am pursuing election integrity. And I think that there will be an opportunity for us to come together and look at what are the things that we need to do to ensure that and come to an agreement that this is the way forward.